On March 8th, 2023, more than a full year ago, I uploaded why Korra vs. Aang isn't close. And while that video has aged very well, accumulating over 41,000 views since its publication, I feel as if I could have elaborated on more and made things far more clear than I originally did, since, let's be honest, I kind of slurred most of my words and I was kind of new to this whole YouTube thing. And since recently the new Avatar live action series came out on Netflix and has been greenlit for a second season, why not put to rest one of, if not the greatest debate in the Avatar franchise to ever exist, that being Korra vs. Aang. Also, please be sure to check out Anime Express and use my discount code of Tempest10 for 10% off anything you order, that being swords, hoodies, or jewelry, all on me. However, without further ado, this is Korra vs. Aang. To start off, I think before we go through any form of individual scaling, we should talk about and clarify what and who the Avatar is and what it represents. In Book 2 Spirits, a man known as Wan would learn the art of bending and would start to protect the spirits of the world, mending conflicts and overall bringing balance to the spirit and human worlds, showing the first glimpse of what an avatar will represent, that being balance. Over time, Wan would be exposed to many of these great mythological spirits until he would encounter the great almighty twin spirits known as Vaatu and Rava. Vaatu and Rava would embody the spiritual concepts of good and evil, and it would symbolize the dualist and Taoist teachings known as yin and yang. During Wan's encounter with the great spirits, Wan would interfere in the fight for control and would subsequently free Vaatu from Rava's grasp. As a result, Vaatu would go on to corrupt more and more spirits, and both Rava and Wan would have to end the conflicts between the pure and corrupt spirits, as well as the humans. Soon after this, Wan and Rava would then fuse, allowing not only for Wan to seal Vaatu for another 10,000 years, but become the very first Avatar, and Rava would promise to be together with Wan forever. Many years later, Wan would then die in the battle, and Rava would fulfill her purpose to Wan and transfer herself to another host, and thus the Avatar cycle would begin. Alright, now that that's out of the way, we can finally compare both characters and find out who truly wins between the two. For starters, independent from things like the Avatar state, which I'll get into a bit later, Aang is by far the clear prodigious character, being able to master the 35 tiers of airbending and attaining his airbending tattoos at the age of 12, establishing Aang's masterful skill. Being the youngest to ever do so at the time of The Last Airbender, and is now the second to Jinora, Tenzin's daughter, and ironically his granddaughter, following the events of The Legend of Korra. Aang, in the span of no less than a year, is able to learn and master all three other forms of bending, and is shown to be especially proficient in that of water, earth, and of course air. As a matter of fact, Aang is directly trained by Katara, who Master Pakku called the finest waterbender, in which Master Pakku at the time was considered the best waterbender that had currently exist. Being trained by Katara is no small feat either, as Iroh thought that outside of the Avatar himself, thought Katara was the most powerful bender of her age, and she only wielded waterbending. When it comes to earthbending, Aang has been constantly shown to have a greater prowess when it comes to that form of the art, with Aang being directly taught by Toph. The reason why this is impressive and important is because aside from Bumi, Toph was stated to be the strongest earthbender in the Brain Benders from the Four Nations guidebook, before Toph would attain and learn metal bending, which is Toph being shown to finally surpass Bumi altogether. Aang is so skilled to the point where they're actually able to use things such as combo attacks, and Aang is actually the only one on Team Avatar who actually beat her, although using airbending. Aang is also able to use seismic sense, basically having a form of precognition, and since Earth is kind of like everywhere, I think you can get where I'm going with that. Even with Aang taking the obvious edge in skill, Korra is able to lessen the gap between the two, seeing how she can metal bend and Aang can't. However, Aang is directly shown to be more masterful with earthbending, independent from what I said, as earth was directly stated to be Aang's hardest element to learn, especially being trained under someone like Toph. However, Aang learned earthbending in a day and became masterfully proficient at it, while it took Korra almost a full year to learn airbending. Finally, when it comes to firebending, Korra more than likely wins due to it not only being her favorite element, seeing how she uses it the most and is more skillful with it, excluding maybe water, but Korra has just been shown to be more versatile with it, whilst Aang's kinda just hesitates to use it, at least at first, and even when he gets over his prior mistake of hurting Katara in the process of using firebending, he still doesn't use it and prefers to use the other three rather than fire. The reason I gave air, water, and earthbending to Aang is, well, still kinda obvious, but it's also because Korra wasn't notably taught by anyone technically prodigious in any form of the bending arts, except for maybe Tenzin, in which Tenzin would probably and obviously scale below Aang, as we don't know when Tenzin got his airbending tattoos, but it's still most likely below or above that of the age of 12. This is further consistent, especially since Jinora is shown and stated to overtake Aang's position when it comes to the youngest airbending master who ever lived. Aang also being taught by Katara, who is explicitly described to be the second best bender in the world of her age, excluding the Avatar of course, with just water bending. And Toph was directly written and was meant to be portrayed as the best earthbender that literally exists, which is stated in the last Airbender art books, and is also stated to be the toughest out of Team Avatar. But that being said, however, even though Aang is better and more skillful at 3 of the 4 bending arts, if Aang even hesitates for a moment, he loses, at least base to base. Aang has shown time and time again to hold back and hesitate due to his pacifism, even going as far as not wanting to kill Ozai and learning how to restore and take away bending just to avoid it, while Korra has simply shown to be way tougher, at least in the conventional sense, akin to an earthbender, and doesn't hesitate to go for the kill and subdue her opponents. So while Aang more than likely wins in base, it's still possible for Korra to get the dub. However, it is stated that Ozai is the most powerful firebender except for maybe Iroh, and that the lightning he shot at Aang was so powerful it would have killed Zuko, even if Zuko had redirected it, which is of course due to the power of the comet. Also, note that Katara did train Korra in waterbending, but it was in reference to healing and not in reference to combat training, so the training Aang got from Katara can't be applied to Korra. But this is for base Korra versus base Aang, as when we dive into the Avatar state, this fight takes a complete 180 in Korra's favor. Korra being the last known avatar of the quote-unquote previous generation with the likes of Aang, Roku, and Kyoshi is a powerhouse in her own right and might even be the strongest known avatar in the franchise so far, of course using her avatar state. But is this truly the case? As I said prior, the avatar state is the accumulation of all of your past lives. However, the past lives in of themselves are just a manifestation of the spirit Rava going from one host to another, meaning any power the avatar state has is simply Rava herself, as is stated verbatim in the Avatar novels that Rava is what gives them their purpose and even their power. From here, you'll get things from Aang fanboys saying like, well, didn't Korra lose her past lives and Aang is still stronger because he has his past lives? When, while yes, Korra did indeed lose her past lives, in exchange she got a Prime Rava. A Prime Rava would scale over any previous avatar to date, including Aang, as like pre-established, Rava is the progenitor of the avatar state's power in of itself, and this is stated throughout all forms of avatar media. The avatar state is stated to not only be a defense mechanism, but when the avatar is at his or hers the most powerful. By virtue of that, Korra should be the stronger of the two avatars, and should be the most powerful avatar to date due to her superior avatar state in comparison to Aang's. Any calcs from previous or prior avatars like Kyoshi's, Karuk's being able to throw around landmasses casually would also scale below Korra, especially if these feats were done while these avatars were in their base, as if these feats were in their base, their respective avatar state would scale over their base obviously, and Korra would scale above them as well. In my original video, I said in books 1 and 2, Korra has the ability to connect with her past lives and becomes a fully realized avatar drawing up upon the power of Kyoshi, Aang, Roku, and more. But as the story progresses, she can't grasp the depth of her spiritual powers, cannot connect with her past lives, and hasn't connected with her cosmic self, and thus this would mean that Korra cannot be scaled to any of the previous avatars. But this is just blatantly untrue, as being able to access the avatar state in any forms is being interconnected with the power of the past lives, even if Korra, at least at the time, couldn't access the avatar state willingly, which is the same thing that happened to Aang in the beginning of his series as well. This is further consistent, as even prior to Korra losing her past lives, instead she would scale above every avatar before her, including Aang, as each avatar gets increasingly more powerful the more past lives they have. For example, Aang would be stronger than Roku, Roku then Kyoshi, Kyoshi then Karuk, Karuk then Yang Chen, and so on and so forth. However, again, this is only in the avatar state, as in my opinion, characters like Yang Chen could beat Karuk base to base, but like Aang versus Korra, would lose once they tap into the respective avatar states. In conclusion, Aang gets to win 9 out of 10 times, with Toph even saying that Korra is the worst avatar she's ever worked with in terms of combat prowess. However, do keep in mind, this is while Korra is weakened with the metallic poison in her system. Even if you take this into account though, we know that Toph sees everything around the world, so any feat Korra has done, Toph has seen, and thinks that this version of Korra is still bad in comparison to Aang, even whilst she isn't nerfed due to the poison. One thing I also forgot to mention is that both Aang and Korra have the ability to energy bend and restore bending, as shown as when Aang takes away Ozai's bending and restores Korra's bending after Amon takes it away. However, whilst both of them have the ability to do so, I think Aang would also take this again, at least base to base, due to Aang being stated to have an unbendable spirit, which he did need to have in order to take Ozai's bending away, specifically due to the symbolism that fight was portraying, and just how much Ozai was trying to, take over the world. Overall, 9 times out of 10, Aang would win when it comes to base, and would only lose if he decides to spare Korra or hold back in any way like he did against Ozai and many others before him. When it comes to their peak versions in the Avatar state, 10 times out of 10 Korra would simply slam. Korra has the strongest Avatar state we've seen currently, and until another Avatar emerges, she will reign supreme. With that being said, please be sure to subscribe, as it would mean a lot and be greatly appreciated. I hope you all have a nice rest of y'all's day or night, and with that being said, till next time.